Hello everyone, I'm Faisal Kapadia and today I will be discussing very important topic of the project management process, and that is the risk management. So risk management is about spotting the showstoppers before they stop the show. So it is very important for all project managers to identify the critical risk during the project execution before they become an issue and impact your scope, schedule, quality, customer satisfaction or resources. So in today's discussion, we are going to discuss what is risk, what are the risk classifications, what is the difference between a risk and an issue, what is risk management process, and then we will discuss each element of the risk management process. So let's see what is risk. So risk is a potential event that may or may not occur during the project life cycle. So if risk occurs, it can have a positive or negative impact on the project outcome. So the risk with a positive impact is known as an opportunity, and the risk with a negative impact is known as a threat. So all projects that we execute have risks. So it is the responsibility of the project manager to identify all the risks as early as possible to have the proper mitigation and minimize the impact of the negative risks. And for positive risk, it's a responsibility of the project manager to increase the probability of that particular positive risk so the opportunity can be materialized. So risks can be classified in four ways as known when both risk and its impact is known. The other classification is known unknown when risk is known but its impact is unknown. So the third classification is unknown when both risk and its impact is unknown. And the fourth classification is unknown known when risk is unknown but its impact is known. So let's discuss the difference between a risk and an issue. So risk is a potential event that has not happened yet but may happen during the project life cycle. So we plan in advance and work out mitigation plans. So risk management process actually ensures the proactive behavior of the project management. While the issue is something that already has happened, and for all issues at hand, we need to act immediately to resolve them. And the management of issues is basically represent the reactive behavior of the project management. So it is always ideal to go with the proactive approach, identify maximum risk as early as possible to come up and to prepare with the mitigation plans. So when we talk about the issues are always one of these. Like it can be a difficulty in completing a work item or task that is already defined on the project plan. Or the issue can be discovery of a particular work item or task that is necessary to for a project success that has not been identified or scheduled in the project plan. So what is risk management? So risk management is basically the practice of identifying, evaluating, preventing and mitigating the project risks that has the potential to impact your project outcomes. The objectives of the project risk management is to increase the probability or impact of the positive risks and to decrease the probability and impact of the negative risk. When we do the project management, we usually focus on the negative risks. So it is always recommended to identify the project risk as early as possible to confront them when it's cheaper and easier to mitigate them. And similarly, it's always recommended to identify these risks in the planning phase of the project so we can intimate the management for all the decisions that we want to allocate the resources to mitigate those risks and to ensure the successful outcome of the project. So risk management process has these components. It includes planning of the risk management process, identifying risks, risk analysis and assessment, planning of risk responses, implementing of the risk responses, and in the end, monitoring the risks. So the first component of the risk management process is planned risk management. This process is basically defines how we are going to do the risk management during our project. So the examples to understand the planning of the risk management process includes that how the risk will be identified, recorded, and communicated. What will be the values of the impact and probability that will be used to perform the analysis? What templates we are going to use? What will be the frequency of communication of those risks? What will be the escalation path for critical risk? And what will be the risk response strategies? And at what platform the decisions will be taken? So the next component of the risk management process is to identify the risk. So this process is basically about identifying the individual project risks as well as the overall as well as the sources of the overall project risk. And we used to document the characteristics of each risk so we can plan the appropriate responses against each risk. And this particular process we actually used to perform throughout the project. So it's not just in the planning phase or execution phase. This process actually we used to perform from in each phase of the project, whether it's initiation phase, whether it's a planning phase, whether it's execution, monitoring, or a closing. So each phase may have the provision of identifying the risk. So once we identify the risk, we used to do the risk analysis and assessment. So in this process, actually, we do the qualitative risk analysis, and this is about identifying the probability or likelihood of particular risk and assessing the impacts, whether the impact is negligible, whether the impact is minor, moderate, significant, or severe, right? And similarly, we used to see whether this probability is likely, possible, unlikely, or very likely. So these, values that I am showing to you, it's just an example. So you can have your own unit of measures to identify the impact and the likelihood of a particular risk. So once we have identified the risk and we have done the initial assessment of the risk, we used to plan the risk responses against each risk. So there are 5 types of strategies that we can apply. So the number one strategy is the escalate. So escalation happens when if there is some risk that is not within the scope of that particular project or with outside the scope of the or authority of the project manager used to escalate to the next level, right? And the another strategy can be avoidance of risk. So in risk avoidance we used to remove the particular threat to avoid that particular risk. For example, in a project, you have a complex scope and one of the requirement is difficult to deliver on time. So we may think to exclude that particular requirement to avoid the risk of project delay. Similarly, there is another strategy that project manager can think is about the transfer. So when you whenever there is a possibility to transfer the risk of transfer the ownership of a particular threat, that strategy can be adopted. So in case of any threat that can impact financially, you can go for insurance to transfer the risk to the third party. So the fourth strategy that we generally use to follow, that is the mitigation. Mitigation is some action that can be taken to reduce the probability of the occurrence or the impact of the threat. So early mitigation action is often more effective than trying to repair the damage after the threat has occurred. So mitigation ensures that whenever the risk, it ensures that risk will not occur and not become an issue. Or if it occurs, what we are going to do to reduce the impact. And the fifth strategy that we, as a project manager, we may adopt is the acceptance of risk. So for the low priority risks, we may go with this strategy and we accept those risks that and we don't plan any proactive actions or mitigation, right? And we accept and we prepare for the consequences of to bear that particular risk, and it becomes an issue. So once we plan the risk responses, this component is about implementing those risk responses. So the responses we have seen in the earlier slide, that includes escalation, avoidance, transference, mitigation, and acceptance. If we have planned for a particular risk in this part of the process, we used to implement those plans that we have identified against each risk. So, like if we have planned a mitigation, we will do the mitigation. If we have planned the avoidance, we will do some actions to reduce or minimize the probability or impact, or we will go for the removal of that threat by our actions or the plan that we have set. So the last component of the risk management process is about the monitoring the risk. So once we have done all the steps, identified the risk, we have planned the responses, we have implemented the risk responses, then we have to perform the process of risk monitoring. So it we used to perform this process throughout the project, and it is because the project risks likelihood and impacts may change over the time, right? So we have to continuously monitor and assess the impacts and or the probability of the risk, and we should maintain a proper risk log or risk register and keep updating them as and when there is any change in the characteristics of any risk. So that's all about the risk management process, and I hope that you have learned and gained knowledge from this session. I would be happy to get your feedback in the comment section. My contact details are available on this slide. You can reach me for any queries. And so my email address is there, my LinkedIn URL is there, and you can also reach me on the WhatsApp number provided. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Bye.